Imagine, for just a second, that you are sitting at a desk, like a sterile gray desk right in the middle of a massive labyrinthine government bureaucracy.
Oh, man. Just the thought of that makes me tired.
Right. The fluorescent lights overhead are buzzing with that low, headache-inducing hum that seems to just slowly calcify your brain. You are exhausted.
Totally drained.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
staring at endless arrays of satellite imagery, just flipping through routine thermal scans of the American landscape, and then you spot something.
Something that shouldn't be there.
A heat signature in the remote Appalachian Mountains. It matches absolutely no known technology. It completely defies geological models. It is just glowing on your screen in a place where literally nothing should be glowing.
Yeah, a total impossibility.
So what do you do? I mean, do you flag it for your supervisor, maybe secure that promotion? Or do you look around the quiet office, feel this sudden, inexplicable chill, and just hide the file?
Well, it is kind of the defining dilemma for anyone embedded in a massive system. You are trained to report, to categorize, to feed data up the chain of command.
Yeah, that's your whole job.
Right. But when the data actively shatters the foundational rules of the system itself, the human instinct often isn't revelation. It is actually concealment.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is the exact tension we are exploring today on this deep dive. We are unpacking the Suveron archives.
Such a fascinating set of source documents.
They really are. And we're focusing heavily on how a vast, invisible network operates completely undetected beneath the machinery of modern government.
Right.
We're going to look at this primarily from the perspective of Diane, who is this mid-level intelligence analyst who just stumbles onto the fringes of this whole phenomenon.
It all starts with these small, mysterious objects known as pips, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which eventually grow into massive organic sanctuaries called kiths.
Yes, exactly. And Diane provides this perfect lens for our analysis today because she really represents the ultimate establishment perspective.
She totally does. I mean, she is a
Yeah.
professional 40-something analyst who has basically dedicated her entire life to the premise that the world is quantifiable.
Right. Everything has a box.
Exactly. Her environment is meticulously ordered. Her cubicle is perfectly neat, housing just a single half-dead plant.
Which is such a great detail from the text.
It is a really powerful visual indicator. It shows a space where organic life is fundamentally incompatible with the surrounding architecture.
That plant is basically the perfect metaphor for her entire existence. She is trying to sustain life in a place designed to just process sterile data.
Spot on.
So Diane is staring at this thermal anomaly on a hillside in West Virginia. And here's what I really don't understand. A colleague literally walks right past her cubicle in that exact moment.
Right, he's just strolling by.
Yeah. And Diane is a career bureaucrat. Her whole job is finding needles in haystacks. This is a massive needle.
A gigantic one.
Why doesn't she stop her colleague, point at the screen, and just say, hey, look at this illegal mining operation or, this hidden bunker? The instinct of someone in her position should be to instantly claim credit for the discovery.
Well, under normal circumstances, yes. I mean, if it were a recognizable threat, like a foreign drone or a cartel operation, she absolutely would have flagged it immediately.
So what's different here?
The anomaly Diane is looking at just doesn't fit the thermal profile of a machine or a conventional fire. It exhibits this strange, rhythmic pulsation.
It's almost breathing.
Yes, it looks biological, but on an impossible scale.
Yeah.
So faced with that cognitive dissonance, her mind just short circuits. She doesn't understand it.
Right.
And more importantly, she subconsciously realizes that handing this over to the bureaucracy would mean destroying it. Her reaction is profoundly, instinctively protective.
Which is wild. And it forces her out of the chair. She actually leaves the fluorescent lights, drives all the way out to the physical coordinates in West Virginia, and hikes up a fire road at dusk.
She has to see it for herself.
She has to verify the data with her own eyes.
And that physical verification is what irrevocably breaks her conditioning.
Yeah.
Because when she reaches the clearing, there is no machinery.
Nothing at all.
There was only a flat rock, roughly the size of a kitchen table. It is well past sunset, yet the rock is radiating heat.
She presses her palm against it. And the text notes it isn't just warm from retaining sunlight, The thermal transfer is active. It is generating heat.
Right, it's an active source.
She touches it, pulls her hand back, stares at it, and then presses her hand down again. Her palm is literally tingling all the way back to her car.
I mean, we have to talk about the thermodynamics of this because it completely shatters her worldview.
Exactly. Because the laws of thermodynamics dictate that energy must come from somewhere.
Right, you can't just make heat out of nothing.
Exactly. For a piece of Appalachian slate to actively generate sustained, targeted warmth without a combustion source or like an electrical current, that means Diane is standing in the presence of an entirely new physical paradigm.
It's an ontological shock. Yes. That persistent tactile warmth serves as an ontological shock. It proves her satellite instruments were accurate, but it also proves every fundamental assumption she has about reality is wrong.
So she goes back to the office, opens the thermal file, and she literally renames it Routine Terrain Analysis WV. She buries it.
She hides the evidence.
Yeah, she becomes an active accomplice to a mystery she doesn't even comprehend, but her decision to hide the truth triggers this immediate, terrifying consequence. If we look at the elevator encounter, it just completely shifts the reality of what she's dealing with.
It really does. So Diane is leaving the building late at night. The bureaucracy is completely empty. She gets into the elevator and a woman steps in with her.
Just a totally normal-looking woman, right?
Well, the woman is in her 50s, well-dressed, but her face possesses a highly specific, unsettling quality. It is aggressively forgettable.
Aggressively forgettable. It is described as looking at someone through warped antique glass. Her features just refuse to resolve into a memorable pattern in your brain.
Right. It is not an optical illusion. It is a cognitive block.
Okay, so who is she?
She is an Aven. And as the elevator descends in total silence, the Aven woman looks at Diane and quietly says, "I hope you find it."
I hope you find it. That is so chilling. Diane just touched an inexplicably warm rock on a lonely mountain. Feeling this compulsion she couldn't even articulate, she hid the file.
And she thought she was alone.
Yes. And now, this complete stranger in an incredibly secure government building casually references her deepest, most heavily guarded secret.
What's fascinating here is that the terror of that moment isn't in a physical threat. It is in the violation of Diane's isolation.
Yeah, they know what she did.
But the true mechanism of the Avens is revealed when the woman exits the elevator. Diane immediately goes to the lobby security guard to review the surveillance tapes. She needs validation that the encounter actually happened.
Because she thinks she might be losing her mind, so she watches the tape. The elevator doors open. Diane steps out. But she is entirely alone.
The footage shows Diane turning her head, engaged in a full conversation with empty space.
The initial assumption would be like a psychotic break. But we know the Avens are real. The phenomenon we are observing here is selective imperceptibility.
Exactly. They are not invisible to the naked eye, but they are entirely invisible to digital sensors.
Wait, how does that actually work mechanically? Because the government relies on the fact that if photons bounce off a subject, a lens captures it, and a microchip encodes it. Are the Avens bending light?
Well, bending light would create a visible distortion, right? Like a localized lensing effect that cameras would easily pick up as a visual anomaly.
Oh, like a blur or a smudge on the tape.
Right. It is far more likely that the Avens emit a localized, highly targeted electromagnetic frequency that acts as a perception filter.
A perception filter.
Yeah. For digital devices, this frequency essentially creates a rolling memory buffer wipe. The camera lens captures the photons, but the frequency prevents the microchip from encoding that specific visual data into storage.
So it basically tells the computer to just delete them in real time?
Exactly. It essentially commands the machine to drop the frames containing their presence and seamlessly stitch the background together.
And for human observers like Diane, because she clearly saw the woman, she had a conversation with her.
For human observers, the frequency interacts directly with the hippocampus. You see them in the moment, you can converse with them, but your brain is neurologically blocked from transferring the short-term sensory input of their facial geometry into long-term memory.
Wow.
It is a biological encryption protocol.
Which is the absolute ultimate nightmare for a massive intelligence agency. I mean, the entire infrastructure of modern governance is built on surveillance, identification, and categorization.
If you can't be filmed or remembered, you can't be governed.
Exactly. If an organization exists that leaves zero digital footprint and bypasses human memory, the bureaucracy is functionally blind. Diane knows the anomaly is real, but the system she works for is structurally incapable of perceiving it.
And that blindness is exactly what allows the PIPs to proliferate globally. Because Diane's warm rock in West Virginia wasn't just an isolated glitch.
Right.
It was a docking station that was waiting for a PIP.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's shift our focus to these PIPs, because the way they find people completely bypasses any sort of bureaucratic logic.
It is entirely outside the system.
It is a highly targeted biometric selection process. These pale, amber, apricot-sized objects are discovering people in profound states of transition or desperation.
The concept of the fingerprint of need is central to understanding the Souveron network. The PIPs do not appear randomly.
They don't just show up on a sidewalk for anyone.
No, they manifest for individuals who have been entirely discarded or alienated by the dominant socioeconomic systems. Take the case of Caleb, the 17-year-old in Appalachia.
Right, Caleb. So Caleb is walking across these rusted, decaying rail lines. He has been walking for 3 days, just emotionally hollowed out, carrying a backpack that feels like it weighs a ton.
He is completely disconnected from society.
But he didn't just wander onto that specific mountain path. He was actually guided by the static of an old console television at his grandmother's house.
That television scene is such a crucial piece of socioeconomic context in the source material. The grandmother notes that the television no longer receives signals because the government reallocated the broadcast frequencies.
Gifting the spectrum to corporate entities. Yeah.
Exactly. And just to be clear, we're just reporting on the world building of the source documents here, not endorsing a political stance, but it establishes a world where the invisible infrastructure, the very airwaves that connect people, has been privatized and sealed off from the working class.
Right. They are literally priced out of the airwaves. Caleb and his grandmother are completely cut off from the official grid.
But that disconnection creates a vacuum. Because Caleb's television is no longer receiving the sanctioned corporate broadcast, it becomes susceptible to a different frequency entirely.
He starts seeing things in the snow on the screen.
Yes, he begins seeing visions of the trestle bridge, the gorge, and the specific flat rock in the static. He is tapping into the slipstream of the network.
And that slipstream leads him directly to the clearing Diane would later find. He arrives first, and resting on that warm rock is a weathered, impossibly seamless wooden box.
And the box itself is incredible.
When he touches it, the wood is exactly his body temperature. The box opens without hinges, and inside is the PIP.
The physical properties of the PIP in its dormant state are fascinating. It is pale amber, translucent, and weighs almost nothing.
It looks like a piece of sea glass or something.
Right, but when Caleb picks it up, it initiates a biometric scan. It shifts color, darkening right where his palm makes contact.
It is learning his specific biological signature. To me, it feels like a universal adapter, or like a seed. A seed can sit in the frozen earth for a decade, perfectly dormant, until the exact hyperspecific combination of moisture, soil acidity, and temperature triggers germination.
That is a perfect analogy.
The PIPs seem to require an emotional and physiological trigger, like human desperation.
A biometric resonance. The PIPs are fundamentally tuned to the physiological markers of despair. And we see this mechanism adapt to a completely different environment with Mariana.
Mariana's situation is basically the epitome of modern urban desperation. She is a city worker navigating concrete and traffic, doing this brutal, unforgiving math in her head.
Just trying to survive the day.
Yeah. She realizes that her rent now consumes 63% of her income. She gets to her tiny apartment, spreads her bills on the table, and calculates it over and over. But the math doesn't work. The system has mathematically engineered her ruin.
The psychological weight of that moment in the script is immense. She is facing the absolute collapse of her stability, despite playing by all the rules of the society she lives in.
She did everything right.
Exactly. And in the apex of that quiet, crushing panic, a neighbor from down the hall knocks on her door, hands her an object wrapped in cloth, and simply leaves.
She unwraps it, and it is a PIP. And her immediate instinct isn't wonder, like Caleb's was. It is pure terror. She recognizes that this object does not belong in her regimented, bill-paying reality.
It breaks the rules of her world.
Right. So she grabs a shoebox from her closet to contain it. She just wants to hide it. But the moment her bare fingers brush the amber surface, the PIP responds.
The tactile feedback is instantaneous. A flood of warmth travels up her arm and radiates through her chest. It actively counters her physiological state of panic.
It changes her body chemistry.
Yes. Her heart rate variability, her cortisol levels, the PIP is interacting with her neurochemistry, providing a profound, non-threatening comfort.
It pulses faster against her skin. It is validating her existence in a way her city and her job entirely refuse to.
It sees her.
Yeah. And then we see the most extreme, devastating manifestation of this selection process with Anucha.
Anusha's narrative strips away all modern illusions of freedom. He is enslaved on a rusted fishing trawler in the South China Sea.
It is a horrifying situation.
It really is. He is subjected to brutal labor, sensory deprivation in the dark hold of the ship, and the constant threat of violence from men with radios who control his every waking moment.
Anucha has been trapped in that rotting hull for 2 years. And hidden deep in a gap between the ship's planks is his pip. But his pip is physically different from Caleb's or Mariana's. It is dark amber, almost brown, and it is completely dormant.
It is dormant, but it retains warmth. He found it entangled in a fishing net months prior. And the psychological significance of the pip for Anucha is absolute.
It's all he has.
It is his singular possession. It is the only physical object in his universe that the system of slavery has not monetized or weaponized against him.
He holds it against his chest in the pitch-black hold and just whispers to it. And as he drifts into exhaustion, the pip begins to answer.
This part is amazing.
The wood of the ship's hull surrounding the pip actually begins to soften. The grain of the dead, rusted wood imperceptibly bends and shifts toward the amber stone. The pip is using the rotting infrastructure of a slave ship as the raw material for its germination.
Which brings us to the profound metamorphosis of these objects. What actually happens when the biometric resonance is achieved? The pip transitions from a dormant seed into a kith.
And the growth phase is just staggering. When Caleb's pip blooms on the mountain, it emits this massive low-frequency sound. By sunrise, that tiny stone has rapidly assembled an entire architectural structure, a kith.
The kith is roughly the size of a small cabin, but its construction is entirely organic. There are no right angles, no sharp corners.
It's like a grown building, not a built one.
Right. The exterior is a pale gray-blue, textured like heavy bark or thick skin. And crucially, it doesn't just sit on the mountain, it integrates with it. The base of the kith extrudes root-like structures that grip the Appalachian slate.
It establishes a symbiotic relationship with the local geology. But the brilliance of the design is that despite being this alien biological growth, it features completely normal, swinging wooden doors with simple hinges.
It isn't trying to be a spaceship.
Exactly. It is mimicking the comforting, familiar vernacular of human shelter.
The interior environment is a masterpiece of physiological engineering. We must examine the lighting and acoustic properties. There are no distinct light fixtures. The walls themselves radiate a soft, amber luminescence.
It sounds so peaceful.
And the ambient sound is highly specific.
Yes, the thrum. I love this detail. It doesn't hum like an air conditioner or a server rack. Because a hum is mechanical. The kith produces a thrum.
A thrum.
A low, resonant vibration that you actually feel in your skeletal structure. It mimics the sensation of being close to a massive, patiently breathing animal.
That thrum serves a neurological purpose. It operates at a frequency designed to downregulate the human nervous system.
It forces you to relax.
Yes. It shifts the occupant from a state of hypervigilance, which Caleb, Mariana, and Anucha are all trapped in, into a state of deep restorative rest.
And the kith actively repairs the physical damage inflicted by the outside world. Caleb lies down on the bed, and the surface material biologically adjusts to support his exhausted spine.
It maps his tension points.
It realigns his posture. It provides absolute sanctuary. But wait, let's pause here for a second.
Sure, what's up?
If this biological structure provides perfect sleep, infinite warmth, and complete protection from the elements, doesn't it run the risk of becoming an incubator?
Ah, I see where you're going. You are suggesting the kith could induce a state of learned helplessness, like a fancy prison.
Exactly. I'm thinking about the dangers of extreme convenience, like WALL-E style. If a system anticipates and fulfills every single physiological need without friction, human agency just collapses. Why would Caleb ever leave the bed?
That is a great question, but that is the precise flaw of human design automation, which seeks to eliminate friction entirely. The kith operates on a fundamentally different paradigm.
Which is what?
Partnership, not service. It is a symbiotic organism. It requires a mutual exchange of energy to function.
Okay, so how does that play out in the daily life inside the kith? How does it ask for partnership?
The kith communicates its needs directly to the user, whom it designates as the tender. It utilizes a localized neural interface, displaying glowing amber text on its organic walls.
Right, I remember this.
So when Caleb wakes up and requires clothing, the kith doesn't magically materialize a wardrobe from thin air. Yeah. The wall displays the word need, followed by visual representations of specific raw materials.
It gives him a shopping list.
Essentially, yes.
So he has to grab his backpack, leave the total safety of the thrumming interior, and hike back out into the harsh Appalachian forest. He has to locate punky, rotting logs. He has to scrape living moss off rocks.
He has to gather heavy carbon and biological matter and physically carry it back to the kith.
He is providing the base elemental carbon and biological polymers that the kith's internal systems use to synthesize complex structures, like woven fabrics.
The kith is essentially a massive biological 3D printer, but the tender must manually supply the filament.
I love that. It forces Caleb to continually interact with the external ecosystem. It demands physical labor and engagement. It doesn't let him just rot in bed.
The same mechanism applies to food. The kith provides counter surfaces that seamlessly open to offer impossibly sweet fruit and warm, nutrient-dense baked goods.
Like the muffins, yeah.
But the plate simply absorbs back into the counter when he finishes. It is a closed-loop ecosystem, but the loop requires Caleb's physical participation to keep spinning.
And the interactive nature of the walls extends way beyond basic resource acquisition. The walls are actually deeply sophisticated pedagogical tools. We see this vividly when the narrative introduces Ji-yeon, who is an 8-year-old girl in South Korea.
Ji-yeon's integration with the kith is fascinating. She is learning complex mathematics not from a tablet or a whiteboard, but directly from the surface of the kith.
The numbers and equations fluidly shift across the bark-like texture.
And it is highly responsive. The kith tracks her eye movements, her pupil dilation, and her frustration levels.
It knows when she's stuck.
Exactly. If she struggles with a concept, the visual representation of the math physically alters, flowing like water to present the problem from a different geometric perspective. It is neuroplastic education, adapting in real time to the cognitive pathways of the child.
Which brings us to, honestly, the most staggering revelation of the entire archive. Ji-yeon and her grandmother, Song-yi, aren't living on a remote mountain like Caleb.
No, they're not.
They are living deep underground in Seoul, and they have been down there for 30 years.
30 years. The subterranean kith fundamentally alters our understanding of the scale of this phenomenon. It proves that the kiths can establish a thriving, sustainable ecosystem completely devoid of natural sunlight or surface infrastructure.
Because 30 years underground usually implies a brutal, concrete bunker existence, like eating canned beans.
Right, totally miserable.
But Sangye's kith has soaring ceilings. The air is filtered and tastes like a pine forest after a rainstorm. The amber walls generate a light spectrum that perfectly mimics circadian daylight. She's harvesting fresh vegetables from an interior garden wall.
But the vegetables are only a fraction of their diet. Song-yi is preparing fresh ocean fish that she did not catch and cannot synthesize.
So where did she get it?
She procured it through the mesh.
The mesh, yes. Because Caleb thinks he is totally isolated in West Virginia. Mariana thinks she is alone in her apartment. But they are actually nodes in a massive, real-time, global biological internet.
The mesh is the connective tissue of the kiths, and the primary interface for this network is the comm room.
So Song-yi walks into a designated circular space within her kith. She touches the wall, and the wall physically dilates.
It opens up.
Yeah, it doesn't project an image on a screen. It opens a literal window overlooking the Appalachian Gorge where Caleb's kith has just sprouted. Ji-yeon reaches out, puts her hand through the aperture, and she can physically feel the cold mountain wind. She can smell the ozone in the air.
The spatial folding required for that is immense. But the comm room is capable of far more than establishing a localized aperture. It can completely overwrite its internal reality.
Yes, the Thailand beach simulation. That scene is wild.
It really is. Song-yi and Ji-yeon close the door to the comm room. The ambient temperature plummets, the lighting shifts to a blinding tropical noon, and the scent of salt and decaying kelp floods the space.
And when Ji-yeon opens her eyes, they are standing on a pristine beach.
We must analyze the mechanism here. Because is the comm room projecting a highly sophisticated neural hallucination directly into their visual cortex, or is it physically altering the environment?
It has to be physical alteration.
Yeah.
Because Ji-yeon takes off her shoes and steps onto the sand. She feels the silica shifting and compressing under her weight.
Right, it's tactile.
She runs into the water, and the salt water coats her skin. She is experiencing rapid, localized terraforming.
Exactly. The floor of the comm room is rapidly restructuring its surface polymers to precisely mimic the chemical composition and thermal properties of sand and seawater. It is instantly synthesizing an entirely new physical environment within a 20-foot radius.
Think about the socio-political implications of this technology. We are talking about a completely post-geographical existence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it renders the concept of the nation-state entirely obsolete.
Totally.
If a woman in Seoul can physically experience the coastline of Thailand, trade goods with a man in Appalachia, and communicate instantaneously with a slave ship in the South China Sea without ever passing through a customs checkpoint, using a passport, or engaging with a centralized currency, well, the geopolitical power structures are completely bypassed.
Which explains exactly why the Avens are so utterly dedicated to secrecy. The Avens are the architects of the mesh. They are the ones quietly distributing the pips to people like Mariana and Caleb.
To understand the methodology of the Avens, we have to examine the brutal, surgical precision of the cold open involving the 12-year-old boy.
This scene is terrifying in its quietness. The boy is walking across a rusted bridge at dusk. He slips, falls down a massive shale embankment, strikes his head violently on a rock, and blacks out.
When consciousness returns, the sky has shifted to a deep purple, and standing over him is a woman, an Aven.
And just like the woman in Diane's elevator, her face is an aggressive blank spot. It is deeply pleasant and instantly forgettable. She kneels beside the bleeding child, and she doesn't offer conventional medical aid.
She does something much more profound.
She places her hand on his hair, leans in, and begins the process of inscription.
She whispers the first syllable, the A.
And the boy's internal reality just explodes. He experiences a sensation of searing, absolute fire directly in the center of his skull. It isn't a physical heat, it is cognitive.
It feels like molten metal is being poured into the grooves of his brain.
Right. What is actually happening to him there?
The Avens are executing a localized, traumatic rewiring of his synaptic pathways. The fire he feels is the hyper-accelerated forced generation of new dendrites, physically altering his neural architecture.
Oh, wow. Then she whispers the second syllable, Aven, and the fire is instantly extinguished by a wave of absolute paralyzing ice.
The rapid pruning of existing neural connections.
Two massive cognitive impacts. She has literally burned a word into the dark matter of his mind. It is a psychological scar that he can feel throbbing, but can never visually observe.
And the moment the inscription is complete, the woman ceases to exist in his visual field. She simply vanishes between one frame of reality and the next.
And when the boy fully regains his bearings, the blood on his forehead is completely dry. The sky isn't purple anymore. The sun is directly overhead. He fell at dusk, but it is now noon of the following day.
The Aven surgically excised 14 hours of his life to perform this neural modification.
It is a profound violation of his bodily and cognitive autonomy. The Avens are creating sanctuaries, but their methodology is deeply invasive and ruthlessly secretive.
It is nature's ultimate encryption.
Yeah, if your organization's primary goal is to build an invisible society directly underneath a massive, heavily armed bureaucracy, you cannot rely on firewalls or physical bunkers. You have to encrypt human memory itself.
This raises an important question about their socio-political goals. Again, analyzing impartially here, but the bureaucracy Diane works for requires faces, names, and timestamps to function.
They need data.
The Avens have weaponized the blind spots of human cognition to render themselves immune to the state. They're deliberately bypassing traditional power structures.
Because they are targeting the precise demographics that the state infrastructure ignores or exploits, the system views Anusha as disposable labor. It views Mariana as a metric of debt extraction.
But the Avens view them as critical nodes necessary to expand the mesh.
They are essentially running a shadow network powered by the very despair the dominant society generates. And Diane is sitting at her sterile desk trying to process thermal anomalies, completely unaware that an entirely new paradigm of human existence is blooming in the rusted hulls of ships and the basements of her own cities.
The tragedy of the bureaucrat is that her tools are designed to measure a world that is already functionally obsolete.
So, what does this all mean? Bringing this all together. We are looking at a hidden universe where organic, thrumming sanctuaries are violently pulling the most desperate, discarded individuals out of the system.
Pulling them into the mesh.
Right. These kiths provide perfect shelter, neuroplastic education, and instantaneous global connection, entirely untethered from the violent hierarchies of the modern world. I mean, it sounds like absolute salvation.
It definitely presents itself as salvation. But any biological system requires fuel.
Right. The kith requires Caleb to harvest raw carbon and moss to synthesize a shirt. It operates on the law of equivalent exchange.
Precisely. The physical needs of the individual are met through the extraction of physical matter from the local environment.
So it's a trade.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what is the mesh extracting to maintain its impossible global subterranean network?
I don't know. What is it?
Well, we know that the dormant pips explicitly require the tactile touch of human desperation, fear, and profound need to initiate germination.
Wait.
They feed on cortisol. They feed on the neurochemistry of despair.
Oh my God. They are biometric resonance changers.
Yes. So the vital question remains, are the kiths benevolent sanctuaries designed to save humanity from its own crushing bureaucracies, or are they a vastly superior, deeply comforting mechanism quietly farming us for our emotional and biological energy?
A perfect thrumming cage where you never even realize you are the battery. That is terrifying.
It changes the whole perspective on the
It
sanctuaries.
really does. So next time you feel inexplicably exhausted sitting at your desk under those buzzing fluorescent lights, maybe ask yourself what invisible systems you are currently powering. Think about what it would mean to have a sanctuary that doesn't just shelter you, but actively learns your shape, understands your needs, and connects you to a global community without a single screen or algorithm. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep questioning the systems you see, and fear the ones you cannot.